Hello again from the sunny Trondheim. I am Zacharoula Papamitsiou. I would like to thank all of you for being here today. Apologies again for the inconvenience with the monitor. Technology sometimes fails us. I would like to especially thank the organizers for all the efforts they have put on making this event come true and for showing the way on how a community can be sustained even in times of social distancing. So big thanks again. Today's presentation is closely related to the opening keynote by Professor Dawson, who raised the issue of the need to determine how mature the field of learning analytics is after the 10 years of life, what the overall vision is for the next 10 years, and what our next steps should be. With my colleague Michalis Giannakos from NTNU and with the contribution and experience in the field from Javier Ochoa from NYU, we conducted a mapping study, and today I will present the findings from this study. It's a bit harsh without them. So this year's luck theme was celebrating 10 years of luck and shaping the future of the field. And given the circumstances, the challenge not only to deliver a fully online conference, but mostly to support distance education at scale worldwide, make the event even more special. The times now are critical, and the question how we move forward is more evident than ever before. And I was, as I was attending the opening keynote, the insightful keynote by Professor Dawson, I was refining this presentation, and I kept asking myself, what more can I say? Is there anything left for me to say? Well, our contribution in this paper is this. We saw explicitly the state of the subtopics and thematic areas that learning analytics research has brought into the spotlight. And among them, in the scope of the general landscape, we define the relative position of the topics that have attracted increased attention and have been well studied, the topics that have peripheral or supportive contribution, the topics that are emerging or declining, and how the interest has shifted around all these topics over the years. We arrived to these conclusions using measurements and analyzing data from solar publications. And I will close today's presentation with a side note on the impact of learning analytics, its objective measurement, and some food for thought and further discussion on that matter. We all agree that we need to set learning analytics foundations as a science, as Professor Dawson mentioned. But we cannot and should not ignore and forget that learning analytics is inherently a technology. And from that perspective, we need to see how the individual subcomponents of this technology, which means its methods, its tools, the processes, the concept, skills, and so forth, how these subcomponents have grown over the years and how they are mapped with respect to their readiness and maturity. And the criticality of the times prompts for self-reflection on in which phase learning analytics are today. To address this question, a mapping study could provide some significant insights. I would like to clarify some differences between systematic reviews and mapping studies. Systematic reviews use systematic methods. They collect secondary data, reflect on the published studies, synthesize findings in a qualitative or quantitative manner, and report on these synthesis. On the other hand, a mapping study is a review that does not seek to identify results. It seeks to identify linkages. It is based on similarity measures and shows the internal dynamics and the structure of a domain and tries to identify, to detect those topics that have impact within the domain. So in these terms, our study is not a systematic review. And to further clarify things about mapping studies and to avoid confusing a mapping with a commonly and extensively used social network analysis only, a mapping can be perceived as a projection on a single space of the sub-elements of a concept or a topic or a discipline and their relations. In this study, in order to conduct the mapping of the learning analytics field, we used key terms that can annotate the research in the field. Those key terms can be either the author-assigned keywords or machine-extracted terms automatically mined from the text using as source the metadata of the papers, which means they're abstract because using the whole text is not a good idea, as in the whole text there are sections where the keywords we can detect are not directly relevant to the topic, for example, the method sections or the results sections where we report numbers or commonly used matrices. In this study, we used only the solar publications, as I said before, because we wanted to reflect on the findings as within the community. And we used overall 459 LAC papers, both short and full, and 168 JLA papers, excluding editorials, that have been published from 2011 and to September 2019. Those papers contained a bit more than 3,000 author-assigned keywords in an average of 5 keywords per paper, and the extracted key phrases were slightly above 4,000 with an average of 6.5 keywords per paper. In order to perform the mapping of the progress in the field, we applied cohort analysis. Cohort analysis rests in the assumption that the key terms that can be identified in a paper can adequately describe and communicate the content of the paper. And furthermore, the co-occurrence of at least 2 key terms in the same paper indicate a relation between these 2 terms, indicate a linkage between these 2 terms, and constitute a theme. Cohort analysis is used as a method to reduce the broad network of key terms into a smaller network of related topics using graph theory. And in order to have a common understanding of how this is achieved, I will engage you in some of common terminology. We use centrality, which refers to the degree of interaction of a theme with other parts of the network. In simple terms, it measures, quantifies in a way the importance of particular nodes within a network using matrices like betweenness centrality, closeness centrality, degree centrality, etc. And we also use the density, which refers to the cohesiveness of the clusters of terms, how well connected are the terms in the clusters inherently, and can be seen as the number of direct ties observed in the cluster divided by the maximum number of possible ties. Having together combining centrality and density creates a space within which all clusters can be located in relative positions. This space is called strategic diagram. The position of a cluster in the diagram corresponds to the importance of the cluster, which means its centrality, in relation to how well the theme of the cluster is developed, which means its density. And in the strategic diagram, quadrant 1 contains the motto themes, those that are leading the area, having both strong centrality and high density. Quadrant 2 contains the peripheral, let's say, topics, those that are not that central for the community per se, but they are well developed and are occasionally used to support claims in this community. Quadrant 3 contains emerging or declining topics without being able to separate exactly which is emerging and which is declining, because both have low centrality and low density. And quadrant 4 contains basic or transversal themes, which are basic and central to the community, but are mostly borrowed from other disciplines, holding the potential to become significant for this community as well. To explain how we put these methods in practice, firstly, we retrieved the author-assigned keywords, and we manually pre-processed them to merge words that appear in plural and singular forms, or that convey the similar meanings. For example, information visualization and data visualization were merged into visualization. And we also filtered broadly used terms. For example, we merged SNA with social network analysis. We treated the data in this pre-processing phase in a non-invasive manner. And after this pre-processing, we ended up with 51% of the original keywords. Further, and for extracting the key phrases from abstract, we used an implementation of TextTrunk for text summarization. And we chose TextTrunk because it's fully unsupervised and no training was necessary. And also, instead of engrams, it can tokenize and annotate with parts of speech. Here we used nouns, adjectives, and proper nouns. Proper nouns, for those who don't know, are nouns that identify a single entity. And if, for example, learning management systems is a noun, Moodle is a proper noun, is an instance actually of a noun. We also set the sliding window of TextTrunk to 3 because the commonly met keywords in learning analytics consist of 3 words. And we requested for the top 10 phrases. After the extraction of the key phrases, we also did some manual pre-processing to remove phrases that were non-highly semantic. For example, we found it yielded phrases like contribution, first iteration, general goal, paper, things like that, that had to be removed from the dataset. And we ended up with 62% of the initial phrases yielded. We also had a Kolmogorov-Smirnov test that shown that the distribution of the keywords follows a power law distribution and is heavy-tailed, indicating a scale-free network, which means it has a small number of popular terms that act as hubs. And also it means that the major research themes can be detected with a small subset of the popular terms. Based on this fact and on rigorous criteria, such as, for example, the percentage of papers covered, we decided to keep only those keywords that appeared more than 6 times. And we ended up with 59 author-assigned keywords and 85 machine-extracted keywords to describe up to 93% of the whole papers. And then we applied cohort analysis on each of these datasets, and we decided also to merge the datasets to remove the bias from the human the human decisions on how we assign keywords, and at the same time we needed to keep the interpretation and the holistic view the humans have. So we considered that these 2 datasets were complementary, and so we merged them, but we removed duplicates from these datasets, and then we applied cohort analysis again. Now I will present some of the results of this study. The results are the strategic diagrams, and instead of presenting one by one of the diagrams, and given that I lost some of my time in the beginning, I will go directly to comparing these diagrams. The first one shows the results from the author-assigned keywords. The second one shows the results from the machine-extracted keywords. And the third one have the merged key terms. One can notice differences between these, strong differences between these diagrams. First, we all agree, they all three agree that MOOCs is a motor theme, is a theme that is leading the field, and also visualizations is a theme that has been well developed, and in the merged data set, it appears as a motor theme as well. We know from our experience in the field that indeed visualization is a motor theme in the area. Dashboards and visualizing information in analytics is a motor theme in analytics. So from that perspective, the merged key terms data set carries more realistic results. We also note that there are some terms that move from quadrant to quadrant in the three diagrams. For example, higher education is such a case, where in the author-assigned keywords, it's not that often used, so it doesn't appear to be central, but only peripheral. On the other hand, in the machine-extracted key phrases, it appears as a basic topic, which means that it has a potential to become significant. And also in the merged data set, this keyword appears again as a peripheral topic. So it's not easy to clarify and decide what exactly happens with key terms like that, and additional analysis are needed. And for that purpose, we also conducted additional analysis. I will explain later. And what other is very interesting is to see that the term of assessment is a typical example of a basic theme that is turning into a motor theme. As you can see, it's in the machine extracted key phrases, it is marginally a motor theme. One of the most intriguing finding is that the area has numerous emerging or disappearing topics, indicating a highly active research area. In order to resolve issues like the one I mentioned with the higher education key term, we performed additional analysis, and specifically correspondence analysis, to better understand and gain insights from the merged key terms. Correspondence analysis is an exploratory technique suited to handle categorical data, and when applied on a data set of words, it can grasp the overall topics distribution. Here it was used to show how the keywords are spread throughout the years based on their occurrences, on their frequencies. And the diagram, the percentages on the axis correspond to the variance explained by the two dimensions, both the years and frequencies considered together. Summing up the proportion of variance explained by both dimensions, in our case, and with this number of keywords, can be explained up to slightly above 40% of the variance data. What is really interesting in this figure, though, is to see how the shift of the interest has changed over the years. As you can see from academic analytics being in the center of research in 2011 and online learning being popular in 2013 papers, orchestration appears to be more central in 2016, and non-cognitive factors and K-12 are terms that are more likely to be found in 2018 literature. it seems that there is a significant jump in the diversity of learning analytics topics taking place in 2015, and the position of each year after 2015 appears to be more aggressively compared to the smoother, let's say, shift during the very early years, indicating a sharp diversification, let's say, of topics from that point on. However, this finding should not be a surprising one, as over the years, people from the learning analytics community increased their interactions and collaborations with people from other communities, and as such, papers on new topics started being published in LAC and JRA. We also performed network analysis to create a granular network map of the key terms and demonstrate the relationships between the different research themes. Maren in the welcome session presented the graph of the terms that are found in titles and abstracts of the 10 years of LAC papers. Here we display something slightly different. In each node in the graph, represents a key term and how it is linked with other key terms that appear in the same paper. Again, in the graph, to reduce visual clutter, we kept only terms with more than 5 strong ties, and we wanted to isolate, to omit isolated nodes. Again, we observed that MOOCs and performance and higher education and visualizations are in the epicenter, and they are well connected and maintain the whole structure of the field. And having said that, and bringing all these findings on the same page, one can say that the field is fragmented, with only few topics having been modeled so far, and only a few topics leading the area. And what also is observed is that the research is continuously progressing, and it's a highly diverse landscape. And from the merging of the data sets, we observed that we fetched more realistic results. As our keynote mentioned in the opening session, during the very early years of the field, there was lots of enthusiasm, lack of knowledge and fine-grained skills, but passion to explore and try different things. As a child, learning analytics were purely research-oriented. This means that their basic principles were observed and reported, potential applications were validated, and proof of concept was demonstrated both analytically and experimentally. These characteristics can be mapped to the lower technology readiness levels if we can use the EU shared understanding for technology readiness. And it's not surprising that universities and government funding sources focus on this phase, the research phase. Further to that, after 10 years of research and numerous smaller or larger scale research projects having been funded, as we move to the maturity phase, it is important to seek after further deployment of learning analytical products in real-world implementations by other professionals, not only by ourselves or our own institutions, and go beyond only research aspects that would limit the potential of learning analytics. A deployment-oriented perspective towards commercialization of this technology would require the demonstration of system prototypes in operational environments, which means real school settings at scale, with complete and qualified systems that fulfill quality standards, and this actual system to be proven in operational environments. These characteristics are corresponding to the higher technology readiness levels, and is where the private sector, which means the investors, focus on. In the between of research and deployment phases, there is the development phase that includes validation, lab settings, validation in relevant environments, demonstration in relevant environments. Mostly what we are doing today. Many technologies, albeit promising, finish their maturity journey in the growth phase, never reaching deployment. For getting from research orientation to deployment orientation, and as for every other technology, learning analytics change, transform, and reshape from nascent to evolving to mature to self-sustained. Besides, learning analytics technologies can be as live as their human community for as long as they are used. Thank you for your attention, but before leaving, I had promised to talk a bit on the impact of learning analytics. I promised to elaborate on this fact, and as already explained, this study is a mapping study, which means it tries to identify topics with impact within the discipline, not impact as a discipline. In order to make this kind of overall impact, we need different methods. Such methods are meta-analysis methods. A meta-analysis is a statistical analysis that combines results from multiple scientific studies addressing the same question. So it takes the results from previous studies reporting measurements on an intervention, and from them extract some degree of error so as to measure the impact of the intervention overall. In this study, we analyzed metadata of the papers, but we did not conduct a meta-analysis. So it's not about the impact of learning analytics, it's about the subtopics in learning analytics that have an impact. And something to close the presentation, some food for thought. The differences in the strategic diagrams calls us to rethink about the criteria we use when we assign keywords to describe and communicate our own works. So, thank you.